Katie Martinez tucked her violin case under her arm and walked through the busy streets of New Geneva Station. The metal floors rang with footsteps as thousands of people hurried to work, to shops, or to catch transport ships. Above them, the great dome showed the stars and the blue-green curve of earth far below. She found her usual spot in Central Plaza, right next to the fountain that never stopped flowing. The sound of water mixed with voices, machine hums, and the distant rumble of ships docking. Katie opened her case and pulled out her violin. The wood was old, but well cared for. Her grandfather had given it to her before he died. A few people stopped when she lifted the bow to the strings. The first notes were soft and sweet, like a bird singing in the morning. More people paused in their walking. Katie closed her eyes and let the music flow through her. She played a song her mother used to hum when Katie was small. It made her think of warm summer days and fresh bread. Around her, the crowd grew larger. Workers in dirty coveralls stood next to well-dressed traders. Children pressed close to their parents. Everyone listened. The music filled the plaza. Katie forgot about everything else. She forgot about the bills she needed to pay. She forgot about her brother Danny waiting at home, sick again with the lung fever that never quite went away. She forgot about her parents, somewhere out in the asteroid belt, mining rocks in dangerous places to make enough money to live. When the song ended, people clapped and threw coins into her case. A little girl with pigtails smiled up at her. An old man wiped tears from his eyes. Katie started another song, this one faster and happier. Some people began to dance. "Play the one about going home," called out Mrs. Rodriguez from the flower shop. Katie nodded and began the melody. It was about a sailor who traveled far from Earth, but always dreamed of coming back. The words were sad, but the music was full of hope. As she played, Katie noticed something strange. The usual noise of the station was changing. Voices were getting quieter. Even the machines seemed to hum differently. She opened her eyes and saw people looking up at the dome. Through the clear metal, something was moving against the stars. It was huge and dark, shaped like nothing Katie had ever seen. Not round like Earth ships, or long like the cargo haulers. This looked almost alive, like a giant sea creature swimming through space. "What is that?" someone whispered. "New kind of ship? Never seen anything like it." The crowd began to break apart as people ran to get a better look or hurried home to their families. Katie kept playing, but her hands shook a little. The alien ship, if that's what it was getting closer to the station. Alarms began to sound. Not the loud emergency sirens, but the gentle chimes that meant important news was coming. Speakers all over the plaza crackled to life. "Attention! All residents of New Geneva Station," came the voice of Colonel Harrison, the station administrator. "We are experiencing an unusual situation. An unknown vessel has approached our station. Please remain calm and stay where you are while we assess the situation. This is not a drill, but there is no immediate danger." Katie lowered her violin. Around her, the few people still in the plaza talked in excited whispers. Some pulled out their personal communicators to call friends and family. Others just stared up at the dome where the strange ship was now clearly visible. It was beautiful in a scary way. The hull seemed to shift colors from deep purple to silver to black. Lights moved along its surface in patterns that almost looked like writing. Katie had seen pictures of whales in Earth's oceans, and this ship reminded her of those great creatures. "You going to keep playing?" asked Tony, who ran the pizza stand near the fountain. "Might be the last music any of us hear if those are invaders." Katie looked at her violin, then at the ship above. "Music doesn't stop for anything," she said, echoing words her grandfather used to say. She raised the bow again. This time she played something different. It was a song she had written herself, thinking about Danny when he was having bad dreams. The melody was gentle but strong, like a hand holding yours in the dark. It was about not being afraid, about finding light even when everything seemed scary. More alarms sounded, but Katie didn't stop. Her music seemed to calm the people around her. They stopped running and stood still, listening. Even Tony stopped packing up his pizza cart and just watched her play. On the communication screens scattered around the plaza, news reports were starting. Reporters talked fast about first contact and alien visitors and humanity's greatest moment. But Katie noticed something they didn't mention. The alien ship wasn't doing anything aggressive. It just sat there in space, as if it was waiting. Through the speakers, Colonel Harrison's voice returned. The unknown vessel has sent a communication request. We are attempting to establish contact. All citizens should go to their homes and await further instructions. But Katie didn't move. She finished her song and started another one. This was an old Earth song about travelers meeting for the first time and becoming friends. She had learned it from a music teacher who said it was hundreds of years old, from a time when people explored new lands instead of new planets. A small crowd had gathered again, despite the orders to go home. They seemed to find comfort in the music. Katie saw Mrs. Rodriguez still there, and Tony, and the little girl with pigtails holding tight to her father's hand. Above them, the alien ship began to move slowly around the station, like it was studying them. Katie played louder, not from fear, but from hope. Maybe whoever was in that ship could hear her music. Maybe they would understand that humans were not dangerous, just different. The communication screens flickered and showed a new image. It was the inside of what looked like the alien ship. Tall figures in flowing robes moved through corridors that curved like the inside of a shell. Their faces were hidden, but their movements were graceful and careful. Katie played on, her music, mixing with the sounds of the station and the whispers of her audience. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew that music had always brought people together. Maybe it could bring species together too. The alien ship completed its circle around the station and came to rest directly above the plaza. The dome. Katie could see lights pulsing along its hull in rhythm with her violin. It was almost as if the ship was listening to her song. Colonel Jake Harrison stood in the station's command center, staring at screens full of data he barely understood. 20 years of running New Geneva Station had taught him how to handle angry miners, broken life support systems, and even the occasional pirate attack. But nothing had prepared him for this. "Sir, they're responding to our signals," reported Lieutenant Chun from the communications desk. "But their language is unlike anything in our databases." Jake nodded and straightened his uniform. History was about to be made, and he was the man in charge. "Put me through to Earth Command. They need to know what's happening here." The main screen flickered and showed Admiral Torres sitting in her office back on Earth. Even through the time delay, Jake could see the excitement in her eyes. "Jake, this is incredible. How are they behaving? Any signs of hostility?" "None so far, Admiral. They've been scanning us for the past hour, but no weapons detected. They seem to be waiting for something." Down in the plaza, Katie Martinez was still playing her violin. The crowd around her had grown larger, despite orders to stay inside. People couldn't help themselves. Something about the music made them feel safer, even with an alien ship hanging over their heads. Alex Chun, no relation to the lieutenant, pushed through the crowd to get closer to Katie. As the station's xenolinguist, Alex had dreamed of this moment her whole career. First contact with an alien species. She pulled out her recording device and started capturing everything. "Katie," Alex called out softly, not wanting to interrupt the music. "Keep playing. I think they're listening to you." Katie nodded without opening her eyes. She had noticed it too. The lights on the alien ship were pulsing in time with her music. Each note seemed to create a response from the vessel above. Back. In the command center, Lieutenant Chun was working with the computer to decode the alien signals. "Colonel, I'm getting patterns here. It's definitely language, but the structure is completely logical. No emotion words, no art words. Everything is about function and purpose." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "It means they think very differently than we do, sir." On the main screen, Admiral Torres was consulting with experts on Earth. "Jake, we're sending Dr. Williams and the first contact team on the fastest ship we have. But they won't arrive for 6 hours. You need to handle initial contact." Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "Understood, Admiral. What are my orders?" "Be careful. Be respectful. And don't let them think we're a threat." The alien ship sent another transmission. This time, the translation computers could make sense of some words. The message appeared on screen. Query. Source of organized sound patterns. Purpose unknown. Request explanation. They're asking about the music, Alex realized. She had made her way to the command center after recording Katie's performance. They don't understand what music is. Jake stared at the message. "How do you explain music to someone who's never heard it?" "Maybe we don't explain it," Alex suggested. "Maybe we show them." An hour later, 3 beings emerged from the alien ship in a small transport vessel. They were tall and thin, wearing robes that seemed to shift color like their ship. Their faces were pale and smooth, with large dark eyes that showed no expression at all. Jake met them in the station's main docking bay, along with Alex and Dr. Park, the chief scientist. The aliens moved with perfect precision, each step calculated and exact. "I am Commander Zek-91, said the leader, speaking through a translation device. "We are Vorth. We come to understand the organized sound patterns emanating from your structure." "Welcome to New Geneva Station," Jake replied carefully. "I am Colonel Harrison. The sounds you hear are what we call music. It's a form of artistic expression." The alien tilted its head slightly. "Artistic expression. Term unknown. Please define purpose." Alex stepped forward. "Music makes us feel good. It brings us happiness and comfort." "Happiness, comfort, terms unknown. Please define purpose." Dr. Park exchanged glances with the others. "How do you explain emotions to beings who seem to have none?" "Perhaps we could show you," Jake suggested. "Would you like to see where the music comes from?" The 3 Vorth looked at each other, though. Their faces showed no expression. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. "We will observe," Commander Zek-91 agreed. They walked through the station corridors, the aliens studying everything with their dark eyes. People pressed against walls and windows to stare at the visitors. Children pointed and whispered until their parents hushed them. In Central Plaza, Katie was still playing. She had taken only short breaks to rest her arms and drink water. The crowd around her had grown even larger. People had brought chairs and blankets. Some had even brought food to share. When the Vorth saw Katie and heard her music up close, they stopped walking. Commander Zek-91 stood perfectly still, staring at the violin and the woman playing it. The other 2 Vorth began making soft sounds, almost like humming, but with no melody. "Query. Function of organized sound patterns," Commander Zek-91 said. To Jake, individual female human produces non-essential audio. Other humans gather without purpose. Behavior illogical. "She's playing music," Alex explained. "The people listen because it makes them happy. Happy. Emotional state. Vorth do not experience emotional states. They are inefficient." Katie finished her song and opened her eyes. When she saw the aliens, she gasped softly but didn't run away. Instead, she smiled at them. "Hello," she said simply. "Would you like to hear another song?" Commander Zek-91 stared at her for a long moment. Query. Purpose of facial expression adjustment. "She's smiling," Dr. Park explained. "It shows friendliness and happiness. Happiness again. Term appears frequently in human communication. Define essential function." Katie looked at the alien, then at her violin. "Music doesn't have a function," she said slowly. "It just makes life better, like sunshine or flowers or laughter." The three Vorth made more of their humming sounds. Katie realized they were trying to communicate with each other, but their sounds had no music in them. They were just information. "Would you like me to play something for you?" Katie asked. Before the others could answer, Commander Zek-91 said, "Yes, we will observe organized sound patterns." Patty raised her violin and began to play a simple melody. It was a children's song about a little bird learning to fly. The notes were clear and sweet, floating through the plaza like the bird in the song note. As she played, something strange happened. Commander Zek-91's humming began to change. Instead of flat information sounds, there were tiny variations in pitch. The other two Vorth noticed and made alarmed gestures. When Katie finished, Commander Zek-91 was silent for a long time. Query. He finally said, "Organized sound patterns create unusual sensations in Vorth neural pathways. Is this normal?" Jake and the others looked at each other in amazement. The music was affecting the aliens in ways they didn't understand. "Yes," Alex said carefully. "That's what music does. It makes you feel things." Commander Zek-91 turned to his companions and made rapid humming sounds. They responded with what sounded like alarm. "We must return to ship," he announced. "Further study required." As the Vorth walked away, Katie called out, "You're welcome to come back any time." Commander Zek-91 stopped and looked back at her. For just a moment, his face seemed less blank. Then he nodded once and continued walking. "Well," Jake said, watching them go, "that was interesting." Above them, the alien ship's lights were pulsing in a new pattern. It looked almost like the rhythm of Katie's last song. 3 days after first contact, everything changed on New Geneva Station. Katie was getting ready for her morning performance when security guards approached her in Central Plaza. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but you can't play here today," said Officer Johnson, looking uncomfortable. "New orders from the colonel." Katie stared at him in confusion. "What do you mean I can't play?" "I've been playing here for 2 years. The aliens made some kind of complaint. Music is banned in all public areas until further notice." Katie felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. "Banned? But why?" Officer Johnson shrugged sadly. "Above my pay grade, Mom. I'm just following orders." In the command center, Colonel Harrison was having the worst week of his career. The Vorth Council had sent an official message that morning, and it wasn't good news. "Read it again, Lieutenant," he told Chun. "To human authority. Structure New Geneva." Chun read from the screen. "Vorth Council has determined that human emotional expressions constitute dangerous contamination. Several Vorth personnel have reported neural pathway disruptions after exposure to organized sound patterns. These disruptions threaten Vorth operational efficiency. Demand immediate cessation of all noise pollution activities or face protective measures." Jake rubbed his temples. "What kind of protective measures?" "They didn't specify, sir. But their ship has weapons. Big ones." Dr. Park entered the command center with a worried expression. "Colonel, we have a problem. I've been monitoring the Vorth ship, and they're not the only ones being affected by our music." "What do you mean?" "Some of our people are getting sick. Not physically, but mentally. Ever since the music ban started, depression rates have jumped 40%. People are calling in sick, not eating, barely talking. It's like the life has gone out of them. Jake looked at the reports Dr. Park handed him. The numbers were alarming. In just 3 days without music, the station's population was falling apart. Meanwhile, Alex Chun was in her linguistics lab, studying recordings of Vorth communications. What she had discovered made her excited and terrified at the same time. Computer, play Vorth transmission 47B, she said. The speakers filled with the flat, emotionless humming that passed for Vorth language. But Alex had been listening carefully. Hidden in the supposedly logical patterns were tiny variations. Music-like changes that hadn't been there before first contact. They're changing, she whispered to herself. The music is changing them, and they're scared. Down in the residential section, Katie sat in her small apartment with her brother Danny. He was having another bad day with his lung fever, coughing and struggling to breathe. "Play something, Katie," he wheezed. "Please, it helps." Katie looked at her violin case in the corner. "I can't, Danny. They said no music anywhere on the station. But I'm sick. Music makes me feel better." Katie's heart broke, watching her little brother suffer. She had always played for him when he was sick. It was the only thing that seemed to help when the medicines didn't work. She picked up her violin and played very quietly, just loud enough for Danny to hear. It was a gentle lullaby their mother used to sing. Danny's breathing got easier, and he fell asleep with a small smile on his face. But someone was listening. In the maintenance tunnels above Katie's apartment, a figure in a dark robe crouched near an air vent. Commander Zek 91 had been exploring the station, trying to understand human behavior. When he heard Katie's quiet music, he felt the same strange sensations as before. The melody made his thoughts feel different, softer somehow, less sharp and logical. For a moment, he experienced something Vorth were not supposed to feel. He almost understood what humans called beauty. The next day, the situation got worse. More Vorth had arrived on the station for what they called contamination assessment. They walked through the corridors with devices that beeped whenever they detected emotional residue. "This area shows high levels of happiness contamination," announced Vorth Inspector Kel 15, pointing a scanner at Central Plaza. "Recommend complete sterilization of acoustic properties." Colonel Harrison followed the inspection team, growing more frustrated by the hour. "Inspector, our people need music. It's part of who we are. Human emotional dependencies are inefficient," Kel 15 replied coldly. "Vorth Council offers technological solutions to eliminate these weaknesses. Your species will benefit from logical enhancement. We don't want to be enhanced. We want to stay human. Choice not recognized. Efficiency is mandatory." That evening, Katie couldn't stand it anymore. She had watched her neighbors become sadder and quieter each day. Mrs. Rodriguez had closed her flower shop because she said there was no point in selling beauty when everything felt ugly. Tony wasn't making pizza anymore because no one wanted to eat. Katie made a decision. She gathered her violin and went to the old storage room where the station's musicians used to practice together. Maybe she couldn't play in public, but she could play for anyone who wanted to listen. Word spread quietly through the station. People began slipping away from their apartments and jobs to gather in the storage room. They came in small groups, so no one would notice. When Katie began to play, people started crying. Not from sadness, but from relief. The music filled a hole in their hearts they hadn't realized was there. "Thank you," whispered Mrs. Rodriguez. "I forgot what hope sounded like." More people came each night. Rick Torres, the chief engineer, brought his guitar. Sam Johnson, the security officer, surprised everyone by singing in a voice like warm honey. Soon they had a small orchestra playing in secret, but the Vorth were watching. Their sensors detected the illegal music gatherings. Inspector Kel 15 reported to the Vorth Council that humans were continuing their contamination activities despite direct orders. Protective measures must be implemented, the council decided. The next morning, Vorth soldiers surrounded Katie's apartment building. When she tried to leave for work, they blocked her path. "Human Katie Martinez," announced Inspector. "Kel 15. You are identified as primary source of acoustic contamination. You will be relocated for species protection. You can't arrest me for playing music. Music is contamination. Contamination must be contained." As the Vorth led Katie away, she saw Danny watching from their apartment window. He looked so small and sick and scared. She wanted to call out to him, but her voice caught in her throat. In the command center, Colonel Harrison received the news with growing anger. "They can't just take our people." "Sir, they have the bigger guns," Lieutenant Chun reminded him quietly. "I don't care about their guns. No one arrests my people for making music." But as Jake looked at the Vorth ship hanging over the station, like a dark cloud, he realized how helpless they really were. The aliens had technology far beyond anything humans possessed. If they wanted to end music forever, there might be nothing anyone could do to stop them. In his hiding place in the maintenance tunnels, Commander Zek 91 heard the news of Katie's arrest. Something inside him felt wrong about it. The sensation was new and uncomfortable, like wearing clothes that didn't fit. He had been listening to her music for days, and each time he heard it, the strange feelings grew stronger. The Vorth called these feelings contamination, but they didn't feel dangerous to him. They felt like waking up after a long sleep, for the first time in his long life. Commander Z91 began to question whether the Vorth Council was right about everything. Katie sat in a small white room aboard the Vorth ship, staring at walls that seemed to glow with their own light. There were no windows, no decorations, nothing that showed any personality. Everything was clean and empty and cold. A Vorth guard stood by the door, as still as a statue. Katie had tried talking to him, but he never responded. She wondered if he even heard her words, or if he was programmed to ignore human speech. "Please," she said to the guard for the 100th time. "My brother is sick. He needs me." The guard didn't move or speak. Back on New Geneva Station, Rick Torres was angry. The chief engineer had worked on the station for 15 years, fixing everything from broken air filters to damaged hull plates. But he had never been as mad as he was right now. "They can't just take Katie," he told his friend Sam Johnson as they met in the deep maintenance tunnels beneath the station. "She never hurt anyone. All she did was play music." Sam, the security officer, nodded grimly. "I know, Rick, but what can we do? The colonel's hands are tied. The Vorth have weapons that could crack this station like an egg." "Maybe we can't fight them with weapons," Rick said slowly, "but we can fight them with music." The idea grew from there. If the Vorth were so afraid of music that they had banned it, then music must be powerful. Maybe it was the only weapon humans had that the aliens couldn't defend against. Rick knew every tunnel and hidden space in the station. He had helped build half of them. Within days, he had set up secret meeting places throughout the lower levels. Musicians began gathering in small groups, playing quietly so the Vorth sensors wouldn't detect them. Mrs. Rodriguez brought her old guitar from Mexico. Tony surprised everyone by showing up with a set of drums he had hidden in his restaurant's storage room. Even people who had never played instruments before started learning, using kitchen pots as drums and humming along to simple melodies. "We're fighting back," Rick told each group. "Every note we play is a victory against them." Meanwhile, Dr. Park was making discoveries that could change everything. Working late in her laboratory, she had been studying the Vorth for days, trying to understand how their minds worked. "Computer, show me Vorth brain scan patterns from before first contact," she commanded, The screen lit up with complex diagrams showing neural pathways that looked like perfectly organized circuits. Everything was straight lines and right angles. No chaos, no creativity, no surprises. Now show me the scans from Vorth personnel after exposure to human music. The new patterns were different. Instead of perfect order, there were small areas. Where the circuits had changed, new connections had formed, creating loops and spirals that served no logical purpose. The brains were becoming more complex, more random, more human-like. They're evolving, Park whispered. The music is awakening parts of their brains that have been sleeping for thousands of years. She gathered her research and hurried to find Colonel Harrison. This was information that could save Katie and end the conflict. But as she walked through the station corridors, Dr. Park noticed something that made her heart sink. Vorth patrols were everywhere now, scanning people with their contamination detectors. Any human who showed signs of happiness or creativity was taken away for treatment. The station was becoming a prison dot in the underground tunnels. The secret concerts were growing larger. People risked everything to attend, sneaking away from their jobs and homes to hear music in the darkness below. The songs they played weren't just entertainment anymore. They were acts of rebellion, declarations that humans would not give up what made them human. Katie's brother Danny had gotten sicker without her music to comfort him. Mrs. Chun from next door was taking care of him, but she didn't know how to help when the medicine stopped working. He keeps asking for Katie, Mrs. Chun told Dr. Park when she came to check on the boy. He says the quiet hurts his ears. Park listened to Danny's labored breathing and made a decision that could get her arrested. She pulled out a small device that could play recorded music very quietly. "Don't tell anyone I did this," she whispered to Mrs. Chun, and pressed play. Katie's voice filled the room, soft and sweet, singing the lullaby she had recorded for Danny weeks ago. The boy's breathing immediately became easier. His fever broke. For the first time in days. Music isn't just entertainment, Dr. Park realized. For some humans, it's medicine. Deep in the Vorth ship, Commander Zek-91 was experiencing what humans would call a crisis of faith. He had been assigned to study the captured human, but every conversation with Katie left him more confused about everything he had been taught. "Why? Do you make organized sound patterns?" he asked her during one of their sessions. "Because music makes life worth living," Katie replied simply. "Don't you have anything that makes you happy?" "Happy is inefficient. Vorth seek only logical perfection. That sounds lonely." The word hit Commander Zek-91 like a physical blow. Lonely. He had never heard the term before, but somehow he understood it perfectly. It described the empty feeling that had been growing inside him since he first heard Katie's violin. "Define lonely," he said, trying to sound logical. "It's when you feel separate from everyone else. When you want to connect with others, but don't know how. When you realize something important is missing from your life." Commander Zek-91 was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "Vorth do not experience loneliness. We have perfect unity through logic." But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. The unity was cold and empty. There was no warmth in it, no joy, no love. The Vorth were connected like computer circuits, but they were not truly together. That night, Commander Zek-91 did something no Vorth had ever done before. He accessed the station's communication systems and listened to recordings of human music, not for study or analysis, but simply because he wanted to hear it. The songs filled him with sensations he had no names for. Some made him feel like he was flying. Others made him feel like crying, though he didn't understand what crying was. One song, a simple melody about friendship, made him think of Katie and wish he could set her free by morning. Commander Zek-91 had made a decision that would have shocked the Vorth Council. He was going to help the humans even if it meant betraying his own species. Back on the station, the underground music movement was spreading faster than the Vorth could contain it. People were teaching songs to their children in whispered voices. Workers were humming melodies while they did their jobs. Even the station's computer systems began playing unauthorized music files that Rit Torres had hidden in their programming. The Vorth responded by increasing security, but they were fighting something they didn't understand. Music wasn't just sound waves that could be blocked or filtered. It was an idea, a feeling, a way of seeing the world. And ideas, once planted, are almost impossible to destroy. In the deepest tunnel beneath the station, Katie's friends gathered for their largest concert yet. Nearly 100 people crowded into the space, bringing instruments, voices, and hope. "This is for Katie," Rick announced, raising his guitar. "And for every human who refuses to stop being human." The music that rose from the tunnels that night was unlike anything the station had ever heard. It was angry and beautiful and defiant. It was the sound of people who would not surrender their souls, no matter what threats they faced. High above, in his quarters on the Vorth ship, Commander Zek-91 heard the music through the station's hull. For the first time in his existence, he smiled. Katie had been on the Vorth ship for a week when everything changed. She was sitting in her white room, humming quietly to herself, when Commander Zek-91 entered without his usual escort. "Human Katie Martinez," he said, but his voice sounded different, less cold. "You are summoned to appear before the Vorth Council." Katie stood up slowly. "Are they going to hurt me?" Commander Zek-91 paused, and for a moment his face showed something that might have been concern. "I do not know. The Council is divided on what to do with you." As they walked through the ship's corridors, Katie noticed other Vorth watching her with curious eyes. Some looked at her with the usual blank expressions, but others seemed almost interested. A few even turned their heads to listen when she hummed softly. "Commander," Katie said carefully, "may I ask you something?" "You may ask. Do you ever wonder what it would be like to feel happy?" Commander Zek-91 stopped walking. Other Vorth in the corridor also stopped, as if the question had shocked them all. "Happiness is inefficient," he said, but his words sounded like he was reciting a lesson rather than stating a belief. "Is it? Or is sadness what's inefficient? When people are happy, they work harder, they help each other more, they create beautiful things. Doesn't that sound useful?" Before Commander Zek-91 could answer, they arrived at the council chamber. It was a vast room with walls that curved like the inside of an egg. 12 Vorth council members sat in a circle, their robes shifting colors like oil on water. In the center of the circle stood Prime Logic Kel-15. The leader Katie had met on the station. His eyes were darker than the others, and when he looked at her, she felt cold. "Human," Prime Logic Kel-15 spoke without any greeting. "You are the source of contamination that threatens Vorth perfection. Explain why you spread dangerous emotional patterns." Katie took a deep breath. "I play music because it makes people happy, because it brings comfort when life is hard, because it reminds us that there's beauty in the world, even when everything seems dark. Beauty, comfort, happy." Prime Logic Kel-15 said the words like they tasted bad. "These concepts serve no logical purpose. They make beings weak and unpredictable. They make beings human." Katie replied firmly. "Without emotions, without art, without music, what's the point of being alive? You might as well be machines." A shocked silence filled the chamber. Several council members made the humming sounds that indicated distress or confusion. "We are superior to humans because we eliminated such weaknesses long ago," Prime Logic Kel-15 declared. "We offer to help your species achieve the same perfection. What if we don't want your kind of perfection? Choice is irrelevant. Efficiency is mandatory. But then something unexpected happened. One of the council members stood up. It was Tech 47, a younger Vorth who had been part of the original contact team. Prime Logic, Tech 47 said hesitantly. I request permission to present alternative analysis. Prime Logic Kel 15's eyes narrowed. Speak. I have observed human emotional patterns extensively. They do not appear to make humans weaker. Instead, they seem to provide motivational enhancement. Humans work harder for causes they care about. They sacrifice for others they love. They create innovations inspired by beauty concepts. Perhaps emotions serve logical purposes we do not understand. The other council members began humming in alarm. This was the first time any Vorth had questioned the wisdom of emotional elimination. Tech 47 shows signs of contamination, Prime Logic Kel 15 announced. He will be removed for treatment. Wait, Katie called out. Let me show you something first. If you're so sure emotions are bad, then one song shouldn't hurt anything, right? But if emotions might actually be useful, then maybe you should understand them before you destroy them. Prime Logic Kel 15 considered this. You wish to demonstrate emotional contamination? I wish to play music and let you decide for yourselves what it does to you. Commander Zek 91 stepped forward. Prime Logic, I also request to hear the demonstration. For scientific analysis purposes only. Prime Logic Kel 15 looked around the chamber. Half the council members seemed curious, while the other half looked worried. Finally, he nodded. One demonstration. Brief duration. If contamination spreads, protective measures will be implemented immediately. Katie had no instrument, so she would have to use her voice. She thought about her brother Danny, sick and alone on the station. She thought about her friends hiding in tunnels to play music in secret. She thought about all the Vorth who might discover what they had been missing for thousands of years. She began to sing. It was a simple song, one her grandmother had taught her. A melody about a little bird who was afraid to leave its nest, but finally learned to fly. Her voice filled the chamber, pure and clear and full of hope. As she sang, Katie watched the Vorth Council members. At first, they sat rigid and motionless. But slowly, changes began to appear. Tech 47's humming started to match the melody. Another council member tilted his head as if hearing something beautiful for the first time. Commander, Zek 91 closed his eyes and let the music wash over him. For the first time in his existence, he felt what humans called peace. But Prime Logic Kel 15 grew more agitated with each note. Stop, he commanded. This contamination is spreading. I can feel it affecting my neural pathways. Katie kept singing. The song was reaching its climax, the part where the little bird spreads its wings and discovers it can soar. Guards! Prime Logic Kel 15 shouted. Silence the human. But the guards didn't move. They were listening to the music, their faces showing. The first expressions they had ever worn. When Katie finished singing, the chamber was completely quiet. Several council members were making new sounds, not the flat humming of information exchange, but something that almost resembled melody. What have you done to us? Whispered one council member. I've shown you what you used to be, Katie said gently. Before you chose to give up feeling, your people must have had emotions too. Music wouldn't affect you this way if you didn't have the capacity for it somewhere inside. Tech 47 stood up again, and this time his voice was different, warmer. Prime Logic, I no longer believe emotions are contamination. I believe they are awakening. We have been asleep for millennia, and this human's music is helping us remember what we lost. Prime Logic Kel 15 looked around the chamber in horror. More than half the council members were showing signs of emotional awakening. Their faces were no longer blank. Their humming had become musical. This is an invasion, he declared. The humans are attacking us with emotional weapons. We must defend ourselves. But Commander Zek-91 stepped between Prime Logic Kel-15 and... Katie, no, he said firmly. This is not an attack. This is a gift. The chamber erupted in chaos as the Vorth Council split into two factions. Those who had been touched by the music wanted to learn more about emotions. Those who resisted saw the change as a threat to everything they believed. As arguments broke out around her, Katie realized that she had done more than just play a song. She had started a revolution that would change the Vorth species forever. Question now was whether that revolution would lead to freedom or to war. The civil war among the Vorth began 3 hours after Katie's song ended. Commander Zek-91 led her quickly through corridors filled with the sounds of argument and conflict. Some Vorth were demanding immediate return to emotional suppression, while others were experiencing feelings for the first time in thousands of years and refusing to give them up. "We must get you back to the station," Commander Zek-91 told Katie as they hurried toward the transport bay. "Prime Logic Kel-15 has ordered your execution. He believes killing you will stop the emotional awakening." "Will it?" Katie asked, worried about what her music had unleashed. "No, the change has already begun. We cannot unlearn what we have learned." Behind them, they could hear Prime Logic, Kel-15 shouting orders to his loyal followers. "Find the human. Destroy all contaminated Vorth. Restore perfect order." But his voice was different now. Instead of cold logic, it carried something Katie recognized as fear. They reached the transport bay just as fighting broke out on the ship's main deck. Vorth, who had embraced emotions, were defending themselves against those who wanted to force them back into empty logic. It was chaos, but it was chaos with music in it. The emotional Vorth were humming melodies as they argued, turning even conflict into something almost beautiful. Commander Zek-91 helped Katie into a small transport ship. "I will take you home," he said. "But first, there is something you must see." He activated the ship's communication system and showed Katie what was happening throughout Vorth space. On dozens of ships and space stations, the same conflict was taking place. Katie's song had been broadcast across their entire civilization, and everywhere Vorth were choosing between logic and feeling. "Your music did this," Commander Zek-91 said, and Katie couldn't tell if he was blaming her or thanking her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to start a war." "Do not apologize," he said, and for the first time she heard him laugh. It was a strange sound, like he was learning how to do it, but it was genuine. "You have given us the greatest gift possible. You have given us ourselves." They flew back to New Geneva Station, where Colonel Harrison was dealing with his own crisis. The underground music movement had grown so large that it was impossible to hide anymore. Vorth security forces were trying to arrest every human they could find, but there were too many people and not enough guards. "Sir, we have a problem," Lieutenant Chun reported as alarms sounded throughout the station. "The Vorth ship is breaking apart. Some kind of internal conflict." Jake looked at the main screen and saw something incredible. The massive alien vessel was literally splitting in two as different factions fought for control. Smaller ships were leaving the main hull, some heading toward the station, others flying away into deep space. "Are they attacking us?" Jake asked. "I don't think so, sir. Some of them are sending friendly signals." At that moment, Commander Zek-91's transport docked with the station. Jake hurried to the docking bay with Alex Chon and Dr. Park, not sure what to expect. When Katie stepped out of the alien ship, the entire docking bay erupted in cheers. Word spread quickly through the station that she was safe. Within minutes, people were streaming toward the docking bay from every level of the station. "Katie," came a weak voice from the crowd. Her brother Danny was there, supported by Mrs. Chun. He looked pale and sick, but he was smiling. Katie ran to him and hugged him carefully. "I'm so sorry I was gone." "Are you okay?" "I'm better now," Danny said. "Mrs. Rodriguez and Rick and everyone have been playing music for me. Quiet music, so the aliens wouldn't hear. It helped." Commander Zek-91 watched this reunion with fascination. He was seeing love in action for the first time, and it was more powerful than any force he had studied. "Colonel Harrison," the fourth commander said formally, "I come to propose a solution to our conflict." Jake approached cautiously. "What kind of solution?" "My people are divided. Some wish to return to pure logic. Others want to explore emotions. Fighting will accomplish nothing. We need a different path." Dr. Park stepped forward. "What are you suggesting?" Commander Zek-91 looked at Katie, who is still holding her sick brother. "The human Katie Martinez showed us that beings can choose different ways of living without destroying each other. Perhaps Vorth can do the same." Over the next several hours, they worked out an agreement that no one had thought possible. The Vorth civilization would split peacefully into two branches. Those who wanted to remain purely logical would continue their old ways in distant space. Those who wanted to explore emotions would stay near human space and learn about feelings, art, and music. "We will call ourselves the Awakened," Commander Zek-91 explained. "And we would like to establish cultural exchange centers where both species can learn from each other." "What about Prime Logic Kel-15?" Alex asked. "Will he accept this division? He has already departed with his followers. They believe we are corrupted beyond saving." "Perhaps they are right, but we choose corruption over emptiness." Jake smiled. "I think you're choosing humanity over perfection. And that's not corruption at all." The real test came that evening. Katie stood once again in Central Plaza, her violin ready. But this time, she wasn't alone. Commander Zek-91 stood beside her, holding a strange Vorth instrument that looked like crystalline wind chimes. "I do not know how to make music," he admitted, "but I would like to learn." "Music isn't about knowing how," Katie said. "It's about feeling what you want to express and letting it out." She began to play the same song that had started everything, the melody about the little bird learning to fly. But now Commander Zek-91 joined in, his instrument creating sounds like silver bells and distant thunder, the plaza filled with humans. And awakened Vorth, all listening together. Children sat next to alien beings who were experiencing wonder for the first time. Elderly humans taught young Vorth how to clap in rhythm. Mrs. Rodriguez brought flowers from her shop and gave them to Vorth, who had never seen the concept of beauty made real. Tony served pizza to beings who had never tasted food prepared with love, instead of just nutrition. Danny sat in the front row, his breathing clear and strong for the first time in months. The music was healing him in ways that medicine never could. As Katie played, she looked around at the mixed crowd of humans and aliens, all united by something as simple as a melody. She thought about how the song had traveled from her grandfather's old violin to her brother's bedside to the depths of space and back again. Music had always been about connection, she realized, about reaching across the spaces between people and touching something universal. Today, those spaces had included the gap between worlds. When the concert ended, Commander Zek-91 turned to Katie with an expression she was learning to recognize as happiness. "Thank you," he said, "for teaching us how to be more than we were." Katie smiled back. "Thank you for learning, and for showing us that the universe is big enough for all kinds of harmony." Above them, the stars shone down on a space station where two species were learning to make music together. And in that music, they were finding something neither had possessed alone, a richer, more beautiful way to exist in the vast cosmos. The little bird had finally learned to fly, and it had taught others to soar alongside it.